from Zoom. Okay, now we're in the middle. I'm going to have there'll be a separate video at the beginning of this year. So according to Rashi, even though it's possible, if you say Chaim Yankel is going to throw a rock into the ocean, even though it might happen, if it does happen, it's still a shvua shav because you have no control over what Chaim Yankel is going to do. So that's not called a shvua. There's no point in such a shvua. The shvua is meaningless. But the Rambam holds that a shvua doesn't have to be obligatory. If you're stating a fact, just like the shvua over, if you make a shvua that the person that was here yesterday is Shlomi Shapiro, so that's a shvua because it's informative. So Rambam holds it could be a shvua informative in the future too. How do you know? So you don't know, but if it turns out that it's true, so your shvua was you didn't say anything not true. You said what's true, and that's not called a shvua shav. If you're informing about what's going to happen in the future, that's not called a shvua shav. So according to the Rambam, and that's how we'd understand the machlokes Rambam and Rashi. But the Rambam holds that if you make a shvua that somebody's going to do something, it's not a shvua shav. Whereas according to Rashi, if you make a shvua that somebody's going to do something, it is a shvua shav. So Payam's kasha is that's what you meant, Mr. When you asked me the question. You meant to ask, according to the Shita of Rashi, it would be a shvua shav. According to Rambam, it's not a kasha, because Rambam is not a shvua shav. But according to Rashi, it should be a shvua shav.
The Gemara talks about the difference between a shvua and a neder. A shvua is like a chiyuv.
It's Gavra, yeah.
So then, how does the Rambam fit into that? Like it sounds like I'm saying, according to Rashi, it sounds more that like
that's Isser, but that's not a shul lahaba is not Isser Gavra or Isser Chefsa. It's a verification of a fact. That category of shul is different. So that's the kasha. According to Rashi, if you say somebody's going to do something, it's a shvua shav. So if you say, I'm going to travel to Eretz Yisrael to do the Kfura, even if in the end you'll be able to, because maybe you'll convince Paro to let you, but at the time you didn't know. So according to Rashi, it should be a shvua shav. That's the kasha.
But there's a difference between whether you say Plony's going to do something, Plony's going to throw a rock or not. That's totally out of your control. If you say, I'm going to make you a shvua, I'll bury you in Eretz Yisrael, then basically you're committing yourself to making an effort to have that happen. If it ends up being out of your control, it's out of your control, but you've made the effort. That's as opposed to a third party. You have no control over what a third party does. If you're saying a shvua that you're right. If you had said a shvua, I would promise to try to bury you, then there would be no shiloh whatsoever. But I think even to say a shvua that I will bury you in Eretz Yisrael, a shvua that I promise I'm going to bury you in Eretz Yisrael, make a shvua, it's within his control to try to make that happen. And so it shouldn't be a shove unless it ends up being not true, which is just like something like we said before, some of the other sheets, a suffix, whether it was going to happen or not. So it shouldn't be a shove.
All right, that's a brilliant answer. What Jack is saying is that when the person made the shvua, it's understood that he was not saying I will do it. He's saying I will try to do it, because everybody knows he can't for sure do it. It's not in his control. When Yosef said to his father, I'll bury you in Mitzrayim, obviously he can't promise that he's going to do it. What he could promise is that he's going to try to have him buried in Mitzrayim. That'll be mishtadel. So the shvu is on the hishtadlus. The shvu is not on the final result. The shvu is on the effort. So after searching high and low for this question, because I still don't understand. I only found one source to ask this question. It's such a good question that I would have thought of finding a lot as far, but I found on page 3. I don't even know who wrote this sefer, Daf al Daf. It's an anthology for people learning Daf Yomi. It quotes different sources. So it says in the second paragraph, "V'hiksheb a sefer Maraf Sinigra." There's a sefer called Maraf Sinigra. Maraf Sinigra is a phrase the Gemara has, which means something is amazing. It's mind-boggling. I could not find the sefer Maraf Sinigra anywhere. I have four places to search, and I couldn't find the sefer Maraf Sinigra any one of the 4 places. So it may be a contemporary sefer that somebody wrote, and that's why it's not. I have access to about 120,000 svarim. But maybe this is something that was written recently, and that's why it wasn't on any of the discs that I have. So the Sefer Raf Igra says, Dimkein Eichish Bi Yaakov is Yosef Kovo Veretz Yisrael Ra'ena Davar Nasa B'Yado Shel Yosef Shekain Tzarich Levakesh Lakach Rishus MiParo. He has no control over that because he has to get permission from Paro. That's Payam's kasha. So he says Miyash Sham. Here's Jack's answer. Acham Adam Shenish Balasas Davar Sheni B'Yado Las also raises the Shua Shav. If a person makes a shua that it's something that's completely out of his control, so that's a shua shav. If he says that some other guy's going to throw a rock in the ocean, that he has nothing to do with whether he'll do it or not. Exactly like Jack said. He's going to do whatever, he's going to try as best as he can. The shvua is binding on effort. Who's Steinman? Steinman. So who is that?
Steinman, is he the like?
Are you Leib? What? Are you Leib Steinman? He's what?
He passed away 2 years ago.
Yeah. Rav Leib Steinman. He was over 100.
This is Aaron Yehuda Leib Steinman.
Yeah, that's it. Aaron Yehuda Leib Steinman. Oh, wow. So that was foolish me. I didn't Google it to see who wrote the sefer. Also, it's a Aaron Leib Steinman. Yeah, so that's a. I visited Rav Leib Steinman. Yossi Stern arranged for me to see him in Eretz Yisrael about 15 years ago. He lives in a, they say about the Chafetz Chaim that he lived in abject poverty. He had a house that was 4 walls, no floor. The floor was the dirt. So they put a box paint. And no paint, and it was just a rickety wooden bench and a wooden table. That's what Rav Leib had in his house. You were there?
Yeah, I was there.
Oh, you were there too. He was just a bench. His Rebbitzin was in a different room. She was saying Tillim all day. She had this huge Tillim. And people would come for brachas to her, and she would stop to give a bracha, and then continue with her Tillim. And he was almost 100 years old. He's sitting on a wooden bench. So, okay, now I know. Now it's much more choshev that this is Rav Aaron Leib's kasha. So, they say, so my Rebbe used to say, they say that there's such a thing as bringing a kasha into the world. That if once somebody thinks of a kasha, it's easier for somebody else to think of it because it's already in the world, it's in the environment. So I don't want to take away from Payam from your having thought of the question, but to hang on to the coattails of Rav Aaron Leib Steinman is also terrific. Not bad. So that's what he says. He says the shvua is that you should be mishtadel, not that you should do it, and it's. I just would add that because it's understandable. That cause you can't say how can you say you're going to do it if you don't know if you could do it? So it's clearly that
even something like you said this. Joe Blow was going to go throw a rock in there. You couldn't go try to find him, convince him to throw the rock. It's not.
You don't have any control over it.
We don't have any control, but you can do your shtadlis. You can go find him. Say, look, I just made a sword. Here's $20. Throw the rock in it. You clearly could do something.
The difference is that's a very good question. Jack, you have an answer to that question on your pshat? That Yaakov's asking? He's saying that
if it's something that you say you're going to do, you have
you have more
control.
You don't have complete control of anything.
Control.
We have only God has complete control.
It's your own as your style.
Look at Yosef with the dreams. It's like Yosef dreams, whatever. And so he says, well, he goes through these crazy machinations to make the dreams come true. He says, it's a nevuah. I got to make it come true. And he goes, look what he does to try to make these dreams.
Yeah, a little different though. That was a nevuah. That wasn't a shvua.
Well, it was a nevuah. All right, but the point is that it was certainly something that seemed like he had no control over.
It's a very, very good point, but I think the difference is that if you're committing yourself to doing the kvura, so then you're the one that's doing everything. You're the one that's going to work it out with Paro. You're going to get permission. You're going to fill out the forms. You go to the bureaucrats. You're going to move it forward. It's true. Maybe in the end you won't be able to, but you're the one. But if you say if somebody throws a rock into the ocean, what's going to do with me? Okay, it's true. You could talk to them and say, "Would you do me a favor?
Well,
could you
ask
throw
the question another way.
Could you throw a rock into the ocean for me?"
Are you required to it? So I said, I'm making sure that Rabbi Luban is going to throw a rock in the ocean. Am I now required to go Rabbi Luban and try to convinced him to throw the rock in the ocean? It seems like maybe I am.
You should, because if I
Right,
don't
that's
throw
right.
it, you'll be over. According to Rambam, you overshoot a sheker.
Right, so then I got to get you to throw the rock.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm saying, in other words, the point here is that we're interpreting what he said to mean that I'll be mishtadel.
I think it has to.
So
be
it's not. It's an obvious meaning when you say I'll do the burial in Israel. It's obvious that you mean I'll do everything I can to do the burial in Israel.
Okay, so the
but when
Bible-
you say that Shimon is going to throw a rock into the Atlantic Ocean, it's not obvious that what you mean is that you're going to travel to New Jersey to Boston
So
to
what
meet
else did I-
Shimon.
What else did I mean?
What?
What else did I mean?
I don't know. So there's a lot of
'Cause I'm
crazy
crazy,
people.
okay.
I don't know. I'm not responsible for all the Michigoyim in the world. I don't know. I don't know what you mean, but it's not an obvious interpretation.
You have your
No,
own.
you can go to Shimon and say, I made a shvua that you're going to throw a rock in the ocean. And say, fine, I'll throw you in the ocean instead.
That's probably not what I.
Yeah,
it's not the truth about Jack.
even if you have a chance of affecting it, but it's not. It's very far fetched in the language. When you say Shimon's going to throw a rock in the ocean, it doesn't lend itself to mean that I'm going to try that Shimon should throw a rock in the ocean. But when you say I'm going to bury my father in Mitzrayim, that's what it means. That
That's your own intent, right? So, but convincing somebody else, you have to convince them to have intent.
no,
You can't have that
I
intent.
see the
It's not
difference.
your intent.
I see the difference.
Why do I care about
So just right before it says Vayomer Hishava Li V'Yishava Lo, before that Yosef says Anochi Esekid Baracha. Is that a neder? First he's making a neder, then he's doing a shvua.
Well, it might be. It could be a neder because it's a neder with var mitzvah. If you say you're going to do a mitzvah, it's a neder with var mitzvah. But I don't know. They discussed this then. That why should it? Once there was a mitzvah kibbut aveim. Once Yaakov told him that he has to do it, there was a chiyuv already kibbut aveim. So you can't make a neder on a mitzvah that you already have. You can't make a neder to be mekayim the mitzvah kibbut aveim, and you can't make a shua. That's a problem on shua also.
You can ask a question why, if Yosef already told Yaakov, I'll do it, that Yaakov says, swear to me. But what is Yosef supposed to do? Not swear to him? His father, at the time, is 37 years old, he's about to die. So it's
a kasha on Yaakov. Why did Yaakov tell him to make a shua
Yeah,
shav?
yeah.
He's asking him to make a shua shav. It's not a.
Kasha's
You can't
not
make.
Yosef.
Okay, listen. They were both Talmidei Chacham. They both knew the same thing. So Yosef could have discussed it with his father, and his father could discuss with Yosef, but that it's a problem of shua shav.
But it's like, so actually, that's like the Ramban was saying. So Paro says, okay, and Rashi says, the same, since you swore, I'm going to let you do it because you swore. Which is, I'm sorry, but sounds a little bit like, I go to Shimon and say, I just swore you're going to throw a rock in the ocean. So, all right, you said, I'll throw a rock in the ocean for you. I still see a similar, I don't think you could get around that. You said it earlier. As a fact, there must mean something like that. Otherwise, what's going on, right? I mean, Yaakov said, well, how could it be otherwise?
But it has to fit into the words.
Well, according to
When
Rambam-
you say he's going to throw a rock into the ocean, that you cannot interpret that to mean that I will try to get him to throw. Then you didn't say what you mean. Then you mean something different than you said. You didn't say that. People all the time say things that they don't mean.
That's for sure.
Okay, so that's not. But if you say I'm going to bury you in Mitzrayim, that's what it means. That's how the Darim Holchem Achaloshim B'nei Adam. So that's the way you're talking. That you would say, but that I'll bury you in Mitzrayim. But nobody talks that way. To say, instead of saying I'm going to try to sit down with him, have a conversation, see if I can influence him to throw the rock in the ocean, you say he will throw a rock in the ocean. I'm making sure he will throw a rock in the ocean. It doesn't. The language doesn't imply that at all.
Okay.
Right, let's take a little bit of a different tack. Suppose, let's say that Yosef was allowed to say this because Yaakov was sick, he was on his deathbed. And we know that you can do things, you can be, over things, you can do things on Shabbos, from Shabbos, so somebody comforts who is critically ill, who's nefesh. So,
Well, comfort only if it will improve the person's condition. Okay, right.
The question is, he's giving him comfort.
So you want to say it was pikuach nefesh, so therefore he was allowed to make a shvur, because otherwise his father would be distressed. So Ein Hanami, really, it was a Shvua Shav. Under normal circumstances, he couldn't make such a Shvua. But but this is not when Yaakov wasn't on his deathbed here. This is in the beginning of Vayechi.
First time you see.
Later on, before he died, he called the children together to give them brachas. But this is the beginning. It doesn't say here he was on his deathbed.
We don't know the time frame, how long is it between this time and the time they gave the brothers.
What?
So Vayikra you make get close, at least close.
What does it say? It says,
Vayikra
"Vayikru Yimei Yisrael Amos." It doesn't mean that he.
He clearly felt he was gonna pass away.
Okay, I don't know if it's pikuach davis. And then also, then you have to say that Yaakov was delusional at that time. That he was no longer. His cognition was going because he didn't know the halacha. Yeah. Whatever Yosef knew, he learned from Yaakov. So you say Yaakov made a mistake. So you have to say Yaakov had dementia. It doesn't inspire us so much.
Even if Yaakov was serious, like Yosef in the end, he made the shvua, could say that I had an amasla on the shvua, that I knew that I was just doing it because my father wanted me to make him feel better.
Okay, but it's again, what heter did Yaakov have to have him make the shvua?
To make him make the shvua.
Yeah, he told him. All right, so I have a question on this teretz of Rav Aron Leib because there's a halacha in the Shulchan Aruch on page 4. Shulchan Aruch talks about another similar case. Kol shekan shenishmat b'tzarach l'kayim shvuasim efshar afa pi shebetchil hayeshua shav kegon shenishma lisa isha plonis v'shemelo tisratza on page 4. It's numbered. Yeah, in the middle of the page, on the bottom, in the middle, that if a person made a shvua shav, and he's able to fulfill it, he should. For example, he made a shvua he's going to marry a certain woman. If he said he's going to marry a certain woman, and so really it's a shvua shav. This is in concert with Rashi's shita, that if you say that if you say you're gonna do something will happen in the future that's based on somebody else's decision, not yours, so then the Rambam Rashi says it's a shvua shav. So here he says he's gonna marry this woman. He doesn't have control. But if she agrees, then he should marry her anyway, because at least it mitigates to some extent the shvua shav. Some say that if you say you're going to marry a certain woman, it's not a shvua shav. If you make a shvua that you're going to give something to somebody, and the person doesn't want to accept it, it's not a shvua shav. So similarly, if you say you're going to marry a woman, and you don't know whether she's going to acquiesce, it's not a shvua shav. So there's a machlokus here in the Ramah, whether if a person says that he's going to marry a woman, whether or not it's shvua shav. The first opinion the Ramah holds it is a shvua shav, because maybe she won't agree, and the Taz on the side explains that according to the first opinion, in the case where if you say you're going to give something to somebody, everybody holds it's not a shvua shav, because giving doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to take it. I give it to you. You want to give it back, so you give it back. But I gave it to you. But in the case of marriage, if she doesn't acquiesce, it's not a marriage. So the first opinion holds that in the case of, that's what the Taz says, that in the case of marriage, if he says he wants to, that he's going to marry her, he makes a shvua, he'll marry her, so then it's a shvua shav, because he has no control over that, because maybe she won't agree. And the second shita holds no, the marriage is the same like giving a present. That it's considered to be a valid shvua. So it's not clear what's the reason why the second opinion holds that it's not a shvua shav. So I would say it's because of Jack's svara, that if you say you're going to marry somebody, everybody knows that you can't force the woman to get married. So it means that you're going to be mishtadel. It's exactly like Jack said, that it means that you're going to be mishtadel. So this chiddush of Jack, where he's mechavan to Rav Aaron Leib, that if somebody says that something, going to Eretz Yisrael is the same as marrying a lady. She has to agree, and going to Eretz Yisrael, Paro has to agree. So it's the exact same thing. So this teretz that when you say I'm going to go to Eretz Yisrael, it means I'll try to go to Eretz Yisrael. Do you know that there's a terrific story with the Satmar Rav. Yeah, I told this a lot of times because it's very, very, especially if you're a fundraiser, it's a very good story. There was Satmar Rav had a fantastic sense of humor. So there was a guy who came to the Satmar Rebbe, a very rich person, and he couldn't speak Yiddish. So the Gabbai introduces him to the Rebbe, and the Gabbai is the interpreter. So the Rebbe says, I need $10,000 for a certain cause. I have to support somebody, whatever it is. So the Gabbai tells him in English that the Rebbe needs $10,000. So he says to the Gabbai, tell the Rebbe that I'll try. So the Rebbe said, what's he saying? So the Gabbai says, I'm going to try to give the $10,000. So the Satmar Rebbe said, well, it's actually Satmar Rav. So Satmar Rav said, Zogim ich vet probieren is garnished. Saying that I'll try is nothing. That's the cop out. I'll try. I'll try means that you won't give. So he says, tell him. So the Gabbai was hesitant, but the Rebbe said, no, tell him. So he tells the guy that the Rebbe says that saying I'll try is nothing. So the person says, tell the Rebbe that I'll try very hard. So the Gabbai translate again into Yiddish. He says, sagt that stark probieren. He'll try very hard. So the Rebbe said, tell him that that stark probieren is garnished mit garnished. It's nothing with nothing. So that's the question. If you say that you're going to try to go, if you're going to marry this woman. So the second shita holds that it's not a shul shav because it just means that you're going to try to marry her. It doesn't mean you will marry her. So the same thing in the case of Yosef. It means that he's going to try to go to Mitzrayim. Like Rav Aaron Leib said, what Jack was mechaben, that it just means because otherwise the statement is off the wall. What does it mean? You're gonna go to Eretz Yisrael? Who said? So it means I'll try to go to Eretz Yisrael.
Can we distinguish? According to this, you can still be over right?
You could be over. Yeah, you would be. It's a valid shvua. That's what he says. He said the Ramah says it's not go make a shvua shav rak shvuas bitui.
Right, so then you still have a problem. Why would Yaakov Avinu make him put Yosef into a situation?
That's a very good question. That's a good question. That there's, in addition to Payam's question, which is that it's a shvu shav, there's another question. If he like even if you hold like the Rambam, that it is a valid shvua, but the Rambam says it's valid, but if you don't fulfill it, you're over on the shvua. It becomes a shvua sheker. So why are you allowed to put yourself into a position where it might become a shvua sheker? That's a very good question. That's a good question on this answer, but I'm asking another question on this answer because this answer is exactly the same as the Ramah's case of marrying a woman, and it's a machlokas. There are some poskim hold that it is a shvua shav, and some hold not. So if you say it's not a shvua shav, then you could say, like Rav Aaron Leib says, that it's because it means I'll try to marry her. But if you say, like the first sheet in the Ramah, that it's a shvua shav, so then the same thing should be by I'll try to go to Eretz Yisrael. So the thing is that even according to the second position that says that it's not a shvua shav, the reason why it's not a shvua shav is not because of this svar, that because when you say I'll marry her, it means I'm going to try to marry her. Because this position is based on a rivash, and the rivash is on page 5, and the rivash says, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's getting late, but look at the end of the first paragraph where I have it underlined. He says, "The kosh came be'ein memashma etein leploni elam yitz lekaba shehanaso niskavein ustamo kipirusho." He's talking about the case where you make a shvua that you're going to give somebody a gift. So he says that when you say you give somebody a gift, the reason why are you making a shvua? Well, people don't go walk around making shvuas to give somebody a gift. He says it must be because somebody pushed you to do that. A close friend wanted you to give a gift. So like Yaakov pushed Yosef. So somebody pushed you that you want to give a gift. So he says the reason why you're making a shvua is lahanaso. It's so that you should feel good. Nimsa shim lo ratzal lekapa rei apater gomer lo midin ones el shel nispatel kol shvuaso. So he says that even if the person won't accept it, the shvua is still a valid shvua. And he compares it. Look at the next page, the next paragraph. The Mishnah says that if a person makes a shvua that he should marry somebody's daughter, and then she refuses, it's not a shvua shav. No, he made a shvua. It's in the bottom of the page. If a person made it said his relatives were pushing him to marry somebody's daughter, and he said, "Okay, if I don't marry her, I should not have hana forever from my possessions." So the Mishnah says it's not a neder. No, that's not. It's not a nether. So the reverse is not a nether because he only made the shvua to make the person feel good. The person's pressuring him, so he says, "Okay, you want me to make a shvua? Make a shvua." So he says, irrespective of what the outcome will be, the shvua was made in order to make. So he says the same thing.
He's making a shvua on his intent, right?
The shvua is on his intent.
So there's two parties in that situation, right? So
yeah, but it doesn't matter. He's saying the Rosh is saying it doesn't matter what she says. He is only doing it because somebody is being Masarev on him. Somebody is pressuring him. So if somebody's pressuring him, so then he's acquiescing to the pressure. But so in such a case, it doesn't mean that he actually intends to do it. It just means that he'll try. The truth is, it supports what Rav Aaron Leib. I thought it doesn't support, but it's just the opposite. It supports what Rav Aaron Leib is saying because it's the same type of svara that Yosef was making the shvua because Yaakov wanted him to make a shvua.
Another proof is Yaakov would be over on Lifnei Iver. In other words, if he really, if he wants to push him to make a shvua shav, it would be Lifnei Iver. So really, what he's just saying is, okay, try the best that you can. And so Yosef is saying, fine, I'll try.
Okay, but here's what was troubling me. In other words, the Rivash says that if you say you're going to give somebody a gift, or if you say you're going to marry somebody, it's not a shvua shav only if somebody's pressuring you. But if nobody's pressuring you, then it's not a shvua shav. So you see that if nobody's pressuring you, you don't say that I'm going to give a gift means I'll try to give the person a gift. Or I'll marry the person means I'll try to marry the person. It's only in the case where somebody's pressuring you, then you say that his intention is he has no interest in marrying the person, but he's doing it to make the person feel good. So in the case of Yosef, it wasn't. So what you'll say Yosef is maybe also. There was the svara that Jack was saying before, is that the person means that I'll try. you see from the Rivash that you don't assume the person means I'll try. Only in a limited case where the person wants to make somebody else feel good, then we say that it means that I'll try.
But in the case of Yaakov and Yosef,
Maybe it was also he wanted him to feel good.
it's also kibbud av, right? So
It's
he
kibbud
really
av.
has an obligation.
Right, so maybe, yeah.
More than making him feel good, I would think.
All right, I hear. Okay, the Rav Aaron Leib has another teretz to this kasha, which is a simpler teretz, and that is the Gemara says, Gemara has a whole story here about Paro with Yosef. Look on page. It must be on page 4. Where did I put it? Yeah, page 4, near the top of the page. The Gemara says, Yosef said, Avi Yishbiani Leimar, the top of the page is the Pasuk in Chumash. My father made me swear, that I should take him and bury him in Mitzrayim. So Paro said, go ahead and bury him kasher shviachos. So the Gemara says a whole ma'isa. Amruatz, where I have the line. Amruatz tignei Paro. Paro's advisor said, Evet shalacho rabo besim kesef tamshilehu aleinu. This was when Yosef was appointed to be the viceroy. So they said he was a slave. He was purchased with 20 coins. Now we're going to make him the ruler of Mitzrayim. So Paro answered, Amalei Genune Malchus and Irobo. That I see signs of royalty in the way he carries himself. Amalei Kenya Yodea B'Shivim Lashon. In those days, the kings knew a lot of languages. I don't know why, but that was like something that the kings were expert in languages. So Paro knew 70 languages. So they said to Paro, if he has if he has royal tendencies, so let's see if he knows 70 languages. So Gabriel came, he didn't know 70 languages. Gabriel came and taught him 70 languages. But he couldn't remember the languages. The Malach changed his name from Yosef to Yehosef. He added a hey, which is the hey represents the name of Hashem. That assisted him in remembering the languages. So the next day, after Gabriel taught him all the languages, whatever Paro said, Yosef responded. Paro said something to him in Chinese. He responded in Chinese. The one language Paro didn't know. He knew 70 languages, but he didn't know Hebrew. So when Yosef spoke to Paro in Hebrew, he had a one up on him. Amalei Agmari. So he said to Yosef, "Teach me that language." Agmari v'lo gamar. Yosef tried to teach it to him, but it didn't sink into his head because Lashon Kodesh had no shaychus to Paro. Amalei shtabali the lomegals. So he said, "Make a shvur that you won't reveal that I didn't know Lashon Kodesh." Ishtabali made a shvur. Ki amalei avi yishbiani leimor. So when Yosef said to Paro, "My father made me swear," so who cares what Paro's going to be influenced by it? Because Yosef said, "My father made me swear." So the Gemara says it means Paro said to Yosef, "So what if your father made you swear, but you can be matir neder? Go get." He knew that the halachas you can be matir neder. So go to a chacham and they'll undo the shua. Amalei v'ishtli nami edidach. So he said, "Okay, if I can be matir the neder that my father made me make, I can be matir the neder I made to you, that I won't reveal that you didn't know the language." So Paro said, So Paro said, "No, okay, I changed my mind. So Yosef had him over the barrel. Because that, and Rashi quotes this in Chumash. Rashi says on the pasuk Kasher Shbiacha. Rashi says on page 6. Rashi says the next to last, on the bottom on the left, next to the last paragraph. Rashi says, really, without the shul, wouldn't allow you to go. You can't ever al shul. Yosef forced Paro to let him go because since he had a shvua, if Paro would force Yosef to violate the shvua, then Yosef would have violated the shvua they made to Paro. So what Rav Leib says is that it's not. This is not. If it's the reason why this is not a shvua shav, when Yossi said, "I'm going to bury in Mitzrayim," is because he knew that he would win. He knew that Paro would have no brera. He had him boxed into a corner, because Paro would be humiliated if Yosef would reveal that he didn't know Lashon Kodesh. So since he controlled the situation. So if you say Shlomi is going to throw a stone in the ocean, so you have no control over Shlomi, what he does. And even in the case where you say I'm gonna marry this lady, according to the first shita in the Ramah, it's a shvua shav, because you have no control whether the lady is going to acquiesce. You can't marry her if she doesn't agree. But in this case of Paro, he knew that Paro would have no choice. And then somebody asked, I forgot who, that how can you make a shvua if he wouldn't fulfill the shvua? It would be shvua sheker, according to Rambam. Who asked that question? Somebody asked it. Jack, you asked it.
No, I asked about shvuas pitui. It would be over shvuas pitui.
Yeah, that's right. That was your question. It would be shvuas bitui. So the answer is he was confident that he wouldn't violate the shvua because he knew that Paro would have no choice. So that's I think a much simpler answer to this question. So we had two answers. One answer is that when he made the shvua, he meant to say I'll try, like the story with the Santa Ravi, the Cheved Probirin, and but the other answer is that Yosef was certain that he'll be able to enforce the shvua, so therefore it wasn't a shvua shav. So Payam Shekayach, thanks to you, all this Torah times that I stayed up last night till 4 a.m. because of you.
My ears were
I
burning.
appreciate it, and but okay, that's how we learn. We learn from each other. Mikol B'lamdai Hiskalti. I learn from
So you went to
everybody.
sleep early then.
Well, then I had to do other things.